Now, the
you do
ones
the whole
I've seen, the
semester,
windows
or?
were white.
No, it was
The
like
frames
6
were
weeks.
white.
Yeah,
They studied
But
the
that
genocide.
could have been
Oh, they said
a
the
couple of
genocide, and
replacements
were the
later,
Rwandans
because
open
I'm thinking
about
of a
it?
picture from like the 50s.
Yeah.
So they,
She's a
I don't, I
criminal
think
justice major.
so,
Yeah.
but Mark and
To see
Patty
how they
did a lot of
handled it.
research, and they
Encourage
found
people to do
a very similar building somewhere in
community service,
Charlevoix or somewhere, and they really
Yeah.
liked the dark windows.
Yeah.
So,
She met with people
but we had
related
to
us,
air
like
condition the
genocide
rooms
and
with
people that-
room units, right?
Wow,
So we're
no
spraying
kidding.
each air conditioner,
It's like,
spray painting
what was
them
it,
black, so they
Tutsi?
match the
Tutsi?
window
Tutsis and
frames.
the Hutus.
Hutu.
Yep, good. I don't know where John is.
Yeah. The Plymouth Township Planning Commission meeting will come to order at 7 p.m. Secretary, please call roll.
Dennis Cebulski,
Here.
Kendra Barberina,
Here?
Gail Grieger here, Bob Dorshevitz,
Here?
Tim Boyd. Here. James Barry is excused. John Itzel.
Here. Thank you. And we have, do we have a motion for approval of tonight's agenda as submitted?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as submitted.
Is there support? Moved by Commissioner Barberina, supported by Commissioner Boyd to approve the agenda as submitted. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we do not have our minutes. We'll take a vote on that at a later meeting. And public comments, is there anyone here that wishes to speak to a non-agenda item? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to new business, application 2478, Northville Downs of Plymouth. And Ms. Howe, your report?
Thank you, Chairman Cebulski. Trustee Dershowitz, if you could please pull up the presentation with the,
This one, the PowerPoint,
no, just the PDF, please.
the other one?
Yeah, that's the applicant's presentation
Yeah.
after.
This?
Perfect, yes, thank you. All right, just to reorient everyone regarding the project, this is the 125 acres that's at the southwest corner of 5 Mile Road and Ridge Road in Plymouth Township. This is the northern boundary. To the north of 5 Mile is Northville Township. And the subject property that you see in the site aerial on the next page shows the general location of the project site. This aerial shows the existing improvements that were already made to the property due to the previously approved industrial business park, the Ridge 5 Corporate Business Park, where the underground utilities were laid. A majority of them were, the detention was constructed, and improvements such as the roadway, Techni Drive, were installed and constructed. So this is the subject site. It's zoned industrial and was planned for a business park, which was subsequently withdrawn. And the applicant is now proposing, as you'll see on the next slide, the Northville Downs of Plymouth racetrack, which includes the half-mile track itself, approximately 5,000 square feet of grandstands, 23,000 square feet for a racing building, a separate accessory structure, a barn with the stalls for all the horses at 35,000 square feet, and then a smaller maintenance building just to the south of that. There's also dedicated parking and overflow parking areas, and then a small parking lot with pathway that runs along the Johnson Creek. The next slide shows where we are in the process. So as a PUD, this is a multi-step development with various public meetings. The PUD option, which is the first step, was recommended for approval on February 15th, and the Board of Trustees subsequently took up that PUD option for review on February 28th, where it was approved. So the option to do the racetrack on the site was approved, which means the next step where we currently are tonight is the PUD development plan. This is the site plan. This is before the Planning Commission for consideration tonight, along with the PUD contract. Both of these documents are a recommendation again to the Board of Trustees. They have the ultimate authority. So we are currently in that third step of the process tonight. And since the PUD option, there have been improvements that have been made to the site. The next slide shows some of those improvements, such as adding the recreation amenities. Soccer fields have been, play fields have been added to the middle of the track. There's also been pickleball courts added, improvements to amenities such as rain gardens, and some additional landscaping that was added. There's also 3 different focal points along the pathway along Johnson Creek that will have a boardwalk out to a scenic vista. So these are some of the improvements that the applicant has since made since they last came before the Planning Commission in February. However, we do note that there's still some outstanding items on the next slide regarding the general development plan. I think the applicant is here tonight and prepared to walk through some of these outstanding items with the commission. But some of these items we feel just need to be addressed on a revised plan, or such as the building elevations. That's an important area for the Planning Commission to provide some feedback tonight and guide the applicant on that design. So our concerns for outstanding items, there's just some dimensional standards that need cleanup on the site plan, although the site is in compliance or can be in compliance with those. There's a minor correction regarding the Ridge Road sidewalk in connection to the path that leads into the site. There are a number of comments, and these page numbers reference our report that's in the packet. There's a number of comments that are related to landscaping. On page 8 of our report, we do discuss the building design. And Trustee Dershowitz, if you could please go to the next slide. These proposed renders were provided today for the township's consideration. This is the main entrance of the facility. The next slide shows a little bit zoomed out there. So that's the north elevation, the main entrance. You can see then on the left of the image, that's the east facade that currently doesn't have any glazing windows or openings or detail that we would hope to see more of. The next slide shows the elevation there of just the east facade. And you can see the material composition. The majority of it, 56%, is going to be metal panels. And 46% will either be the split-faced CMU block. That's kind of the band at the bottom. And then some sea brick. So the majority of the materials are still metal. So this has a very industrial feel to the building. And without the additional glazing or kind of variation to the facades, this east elevation I think is a good example of just the entire building. We'd like to see some additional, enhancements to those facades. So that is one item for consideration and feedback tonight that would be very valuable for the commission to provide. The next elevation shows the south building facade, and this is where the grandstands would be, and you can still see the east elevation there in the corner, or in the right. Going back to the list of outstanding items, after building design, we note the lighting plan. This has been revised since on Friday. The applicant did submit a revised lighting plan to the township, and the light poles have been dropped from 90 feet to 50 feet, and some of the illumination levels have been decreased. So we see this as a benefit, provided that the commission is okay with it. The lighting poles at Township Park with the ball fields that have been installed in the past couple of years are also 50 feet, and those are much closer to residential homes than those of the track, although the lighting intensity is different. But we feel that that is a comfortable height, considering that is what the township has installed on public property. So just looking for confirmation from the commission on that item. And then the PUD contract has also been provided. there are a number of concerns that we have with the contract, some of the ambiguity with the language, specifically related to the environmental enhancements that the applicant had talked about during the PUD option phase regarding the solar, the geothermal. They would, as we understand it, they would still like the opportunity to investigate the feasibility, and I think they have a presentation this evening to talk a little bit more about what that entails. But that is something that we would like to see cleared up a little bit more in the PUD contract. There's some other provisions as well, but that's just one example of an outstanding item that we see we'd like to have buttoned up before the commission could make a final recommendation on this project. So tonight, we think the applicant has made improvements to the plan that are in keeping with the PUD, the original PUD option that was approved in February, but we still think there's room for some of those items to be tidied up. So we're recommending a table this evening, provided that the commission can provide some feedback to the applicant on the building design and other items. And the engineer is also here as well with any comments regarding the site design. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the engineering has the report?
Yes, we provided a review letter dated April 20th of the provided site plan. Because this site was previously constructed for the Ridge 5 corporate park and accepted by the township, a lot of the existing utilities are already in place on the property itself, including water main, sanitary sewer, and a stormwater detention facility. All those documents have been reviewed and accepted by the township for that previous project. Thus, any modifications to those utilities would just require additional recording documents with the township itself. We have noted a couple comments here just to aid the design engineers with the revision of their site plans. Mainly, the biggest changes on the site would be the inclusion of the secondary drive south of the current drive along Ridge Road to serve as an emergency access drive for the fire department. There would be an emergency gate with a knockbox for their use on that, and that would be located on the same drive as the parking lot for the walking path around the facility. They're proposing a new loop around the proposed building itself for the water main, and they're still connecting into the existing sanitary sewer along the development. It is noted in our report that we recommend a traffic impact assessment be sent to the township, though the data provided by the engineers for the project note, I believe, a daily use of approximately 200 people coming to the development. This would be for a full day amount, where this information was provided to our traffic review engineers, and the actual amount during the peak hours in the morning and in the PM would not be significant enough to warrant any current changes along Ridge Road.
Excuse me a second, is that in the report?
I do not believe that was actually stated in the report.
Okay.
Also, along in the report, we know all necessary easements, permits, and approvals outside of Plymouth Township that would be required to complete this development, including approvals from Wayne County for the revised stormwater detention facilities. Even though this was previously approved, the county would still need to be notified of any significant changes happening on the site. And then the same would be said for the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy with the State Department for their construction of the water main, sanitary sewer, and any possible impacts to the floodplain or wetlands. With that being said, because of the already existing facilities on site, the engineers were confident in the engineer's ability to revise the site plan to meet those requirements for Plymouth Township, and would recommend approval at this time.
So I'm a little confused. So are you recommending a traffic study, even though that, I heard you say it wouldn't have this development would not have a big impact on the traffic?
It wouldn't be necessary for this development, but it would be nice to have on hand for any future expansion in this area, because this area is going to be a high developed area in the future, so any existing data that we can have on hand would be helpful in the future, we would think.
Okay, thank you. And the applicants received a report from the fire department. There are some issues that need to be clarified before they will grant approval from a public safety perspective. So the applicant is here, and we're ready to hear your proposal.
Good evening. My name is Becky Klein from PEA Group. Address is 58105 Van Dyke Avenue, Washington Township. So just to quickly respond to the various bullet points that were brought up here so far this evening. The revised plan set does have some late corrections to it, including we coordinated with the fire inspector, and there will be a set of gates around the site, all equipped with Knox boxes per their specifications so that they can get in and out. In addition, we've committed to preparing an emergency management plan in conjunction with the fire department, and part of that plan will mandate that during operational hours, in the event of an emergency, the first action of staff on site will be to make sure that all the emergency gates are open and available for both evacuation and for fire department use. And at that point, I did get an email response from the fire department that those changes are acceptable now, and they have no further issues with our site layout. We did, of course, address a lot of the other issues that had been brought up, including the additional amenities on the walking path. I understand there's a few more items that we need to clean up, like making a direct connection from the Ridge Road right-of-way to the walking path. That'll be a simple addition of another length of sidewalk, so that will be added. And I believe, other than some architectural issues, we have addressed most of the concerns that have been brought up with the site drawings themselves. There are, of course, some language issues and items that need to be worked out in the agreements under which this PUD will operate. Would like to, could you pull up the site plan package for me? Yeah, the drawing package. There we go. I'd like to go into, it's about 10 pages in to where the sightline profile is for the harness racing track.
What,
So that's going to be, it'll be page C3.5, so that's about 10 pages in, 10, 12 pages in.
okay, C3.5.
Okay, this is the page, yeah. So, just to reiterate upon the point regarding the lighting of the track area and the site, we definitely want to be sensitive to the neighbors. This particular profile is drawn from the perspective of an individual in the manufactured housing community to the south of the site. So there is approximately a wetland between the track and the home there. And just we've superimposed the topography and representation of the trees that are within that protected wetland that will remain and help serve as a buffer. But with the reduced pole heights, while you will still be able to see some of the light through the trees when the track is in use during a nighttime event, the trespass and the glare is going to be a lot less. And we have committed as well to coordinating closely with the township for event lighting hours. And all these lights can be programmatically controlled so that the stadium lights will go on no more than 30 minutes prior to a nighttime event, and they'll turn off no more than 30 minutes after that event, so as to create the least amount of intrusion possible to the neighborhood. In addition, the on-site lighting for the parking areas will also be sensor and programmable control run, so that they can be set to be turned off at dawn and on at dusk. And they will have a sensor, so that if there's no activity detected within the sensor range, the lights will dim down to a preset security level, and they'll remain there. However, if somebody should drive into the parking lot in the middle of the night, the sensors will detect that and lights are going to come back up. So that's a security feature that I think will minimize light trespass, as well as protect the property and discourage casual trespassers in the evening hours. So I just really wanted to go through that real quick. I'm happy to answer questions that have to do with the site engineering. I know Bill wanted to stand up and go through some of the low impact design items that we're still exploring for the property.
If you pull up that PowerPoint presentation. Again, I'm Bill Haber with Melville Property Group. Yeah, we've been doing the owner's rep work, construction supervision. So that PowerPoint, there was, as part of the PUD contract, if you could advance that.
Hold the microphone up to your face.
Sure, sorry about that. Yeah, as part of the PUD contract, there was some, what the board had said was some things that weren't very clear. And so if you could forward to the emergency egress plan. Next slide there. So, we worked this out with the fire marshal to bring the fire trucks in during an emergency. There's that secondary exit that the engineer was speaking about. And so it is a, circle. We're using the track, and now the track's been reinforced for 85,000 pounds for fire trucks to move in and out. So again, there was discussion about, emergency egress. And so that was one of the clarifications we made as part of this recent submittal. The other had to do with the energy conservation measures, the environmental measures that we've been talking about. And just like everything else, we have to go through an approval process. And so as part of this PUD contract, we had to say we're exploring these options. We have to get review and approval of those options. And so those, if you could advance that next slide. In Michigan, there's the Lean and Green Energy Conservation Program. It's called PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy Act, that now funds these types of projects. That's what we're going after, and we're genuine in our desire to have these projects done. We're working with John Wiley with Lean and Green. If you could advance the next slide. And so these are the types of projects that we can fund. This would be, I think, maybe the first one in Wayne County, I'm not sure, maybe Plymouth Township, to apply for these types of energy funding. Energy efficient improvements, water efficiency improvements, as you can see, and renewable energy are now all subject to funding and financing. If you could advance the next slide. And this is how it works. There are 7 finance companies in the country that are approved for this type of program. We would be selected and awarded for those funds through the private lender, goes to us as the property owner, then through a special assessment collected by the local government, and then a long-term payment of up to, say, 20 years to fund these types of projects.
Excuse me, what is meant by a special assessment collected by local government?
This would be similar to collecting a tax.
A special assessment collected from whom?
The private lender, Plymouth would review and approve this as a program.
I know what a special assessment district is, but
Sure.
who it's collected from whom? From the racetrack?
Yeah. Yeah, and so we're setting it up as a financing plan that would be managed through the township. So again, if there were, the LED lighting or some of the other projects we're talking about, yes, the lender sends it over to the property owner. The property then is collected through, as we said, a special assessment through the township.
That's the first I've heard of that.
That's how Lean and Green and that's how PACE works.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that before.
So the residents wouldn't be paying for this?
Oh, no,
No,
not
what
at
he's
all.
saying is the
Property owner?
township would be responsible for collecting the special
No,
assessment.
they're not responsible for it. No.
Me? Oh, I just asked
Why are they interrupting?
if it would be an assessment for
interrupting us.
the residents, or would it just be the property
No,
owner?
and again,
And he indicated it was just the property owner.
Sorry. These slides were taken right from the, Michigan Lean and Green PowerPoint. That was
So, yeah, be that as
readily
it may,
available.
but the presumption that the township would collect and make payments to a private lender is not
No, you're-
necessarily a safe presumption.
No, it's collected as if it were a property tax. So it's not, you're not responsible for it. You're not guaranteeing it. This is not taxpayer money. These are federal funds that this is how it's been set up on a national level.
All right.
Okay, excuse me.
No interrupting.
Now, this is our time to talk, so please, let's hear this individual
Yeah, I
out.
assure you, sorry about that, but I assure you this is not any different than anywhere else in how the program is funded or financed or managed anywhere else. This is sort of that standard delivery, and I'd be happy to go through it with you.
Okay. Let's move
So the
on.
projects that we are proposing and that we've presented, if you could go to the next slide. These are the counties in Michigan that currently have the program in place and are administrating it today. Next slide. These are the projects that we're looking at. The large yellow area is a 1 megawatt solar field array with battery storage. So we would be storing and using batteries or battery storage all throughout the day. The second is a water retention, stormwater reuse for irrigation, tract irrigation, and wash down. It's a environmentally conservation of water. And then a free cooling system that is drawing from the pond in a closed loop system that I can show you again. Those are the three projects along with LED lighting that we're proposing for Northville Downs. Next. That's, if you've never seen a field solar panel array, that's what they look like. That's a 1 megawatt version. Next. That's the geothermal free cooling heat exchanger that would go down in the pond and we're drawing cool water and then rejecting the heat back into the pond with a water fountain feature. Next is all the LED and all the lighting throughout the facility would all be LED interior and exterior. Next slide. Green pavers for our overflow systems. So those are environmentally conservative, but as we said, in the PUD contract, this has to be reviewed and approved, and that's the process we have to go through.
So did your site plan show that solar array and all these other features?
Again, I don't know if they're shown or not.
They are shown on the current set of plans. There's a schematic of the solar panel array and for the heat exchanger and pump station for handling the irrigation and the washing station are all on the plans.
And how does this fit into this lien that you know, that's supposed to be environmentally sound. Is that special certification you're going for, or?
The funds are available through your CPACE program here in Michigan. So the Property Assessed Clean Energy are funds that are available, and our project have to be reviewed and submitted, reviewed, and approved. And we're in that process now.
Any questions from the commission up to this point, what's been presented? Okay, we might come back to that once we learn a little more.
Thank you.
Any other presentations from your group?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Al Valentine with the GAV Associates, or the architects. It seems like the concern is with the east side of the building. That's where the concession kitchen is, where there's freezers, coolers, kitchen equipment, things where windows wouldn't work too well. You could do windows up high, and then if you have to put in windows you can't see through because of the structure that would be supporting ductwork, ceilings, other things. But you can do spandrel glass, things like that to try and dress it up.
Brando windows, if I can suggest, Brando windows that have been used in other places of the township is an alternative. And if you did something with the brick, there's patterns you can put into the brick. You know, you can make like a square or rectangle. You can use medallions. You can look around up and down Ann Arbor Road where some of that has been done on the commercial buildings that could serve as inspiration. And there's not very much masonry. I mean, it's less than half of that elevation.
It can be adjusted and added and attempted to dress it up. It's rather than just adding medallions or applied materials, we can look at it, try and break it up.
Are you talking about this wall here?
On the left,
Yeah.
it is something you see as you drive up. But the focus is on the track side and the main entrance.
It strikes me, a few months ago, we approved an elevation for the warehouse that is going on the east side of Ridge Road, south of 5 Mile. And it is a warehouse, but the applicant came back and made some additional architectural enhancements to the building that really improved the look of it. And to be honest, from what I recall, I think that building looks better than the elevation that you have here. So I would recommend you look at that and see if there are ideas that could be applied here, because I don't believe the building is the way the elevations you have them right now are quite of the level that I'd like to see.
Okay.
And you could look at, on that particular warehouse, actually the one on Ridge Road, and there's another one going on Napier. The corners, the best way I could describe it, it was sort of a layering of material. So it just gave it a little more architectural interest, which I don't think increased the cost significantly, but it added significantly to the look of the building.
Is it constructed now?
No, but you can go to the planning department. They'd be, I'm sure, be more than willing to share the elevations with you. You can use that for inspiration.
Sure. My name is, excuse me, my name is John Carlo from Northville Downs. I just wanted to touch on the window issue. We have a very controlled atmosphere from a lighting aspect. We run over 200 televisions, and one thing that we've struggled with is keeping the lights and the glares off of the television. So as you can see from the presentation, the opposite side of this building is all windows. Well, excuse me, it's 80% windows. So we do have to use some controls with the other sides for our bulkheads, for our big screen TVs, for our projectors. It's not a movie theater, but it has the same feel once you get inside and sit down. And I just want that to be considered when you're talking about what more you'd like to see. From a window perspective, we're about maxed out on windows.
Yeah, I can understand that. That's why I suggested the Sprandl windows. You can just look when you drive out here, the CVS building that's here on the corner of Haggerty and Ann Arbor Road, I have Sprandl windows. Those are not real windows. It's solid. So it wouldn't
We
even
will
have any
definitely take a
lighting
look at those options
Yeah.
and try to dress it up for you.
And also, if you're going to use a little more masonry, you could do something with brick patterns or, as I said, medallions, accent pieces, I think would go a long way to improve the look of the building, as well as looking at the warehouses that have been approved. where they've done some interesting things to the corners that kind of reduce that boxy look. Ms. Howe, would you have any other suggestions from other applications that you can think of?
Well, yes, I think there could be some more variation in the roof line. Like you said, the corners are an easy place to accentuate that. If you take Trustee Dershowitz, if you could go back just a slide or two to the front facade, the north facade. I think also, from this angle, if you look further down, you're still going to have a lot of traffic to the right of the main entrance, right? That's to the west of the main entrance. And something to break up that facade as well. That entire north facade is approximately 280 feet in length. And the ordinance prescribes variation at least every 100 feet at a minimum. And that's just a typical, conventional development. So the fact that this is a PUD and a very prominent facade, I would think would warrant greater interest than just the 100-foot minimum. The plan set also has the elevations for the barn, and I think it's important to think about how this structure and the barn tie together. They are pretty close in proximity, and the barn has there's not a color render of that, but the elevations show a little bit more detail in kind of a traditional barn structure. So maybe tying those two together might be one option.
You're suggesting that we make this building look more like a barn, or have more barn-looking features to match the other, or vice versa?
I would think you would want it to tie into the horse racing. I think the impression that the commission is saying right now is that this is a bit industrial or similar to industrial buildings that have been approved, and doesn't necessarily say horse or horse track.
Is there a rendering of the barn in this packet that we could?
Their elevation.
Yeah, in the plan set, there are the building elevations, but not a colored render.
Can you show us, Bob, do you know where the?
Not off the top of my head, but I can see if I can try to find
They're
it.
going to be almost at the end.
That it?
No.
The building. Keep going. That's the barn.
That's the barn?
Next time, if we could see a color rendering of that as well, that would be helpful.
Is there any reason that I can do the same? Is there any reason that I can do the same?
Well, it's a horse stable, it's not a building that's trying to make it very functional.
I can see your point, Laura, that the building, the racetrack's very industrial looking, and this very much looks like a horse barn. Are they the same materials?
About the same. This is a clear span building. This is a clear span building, so it is built differently. Excuse me. So yeah, it's a completely different structure build.
Thoughts from the commission?
Given the location of the barn, when you drive into the facility, it's going to be, pretty much in your line of sight. And I would reiterate Laura's comment that I'd like to see the barn a little bit more reflective of the other facility. I don't
Barn
think this-
reflective of the other facility, or the facility reflective of the barn?
The barn reflective of the main facility that you're going to do these enhancements that we talked about tonight.
You want the barn to look less barn-like?
Yeah, I think it should tie more to the main,
So you want them both to look
Or should-
industrial?
Or should they both reflect that it's a
If you'd like a few of those-
horse-related
What do
activity?
you call them, cupolas? What do you call
It's
them?
hard to tell without knowing the color,
Yeah.
without seeing
Right.
the colored
It really
renderings.
is.
Right, I think our colors are going to tie in together. I think, it's just a matter of picking out the roof metal. The barn, the brick around the facility is going to be very similar. As for the color of the roof, it's going to either be a solid slate gray or something to match the building that we have. If you'd like to see a few of those little spires on the ends of the corners of the building to make it look more like this barn, or take these off to make this look more like the industrial building that you've been telling us it looks too much like of. I'm just a little confused right now.
I want to be clear here, we're not recommending that the main building look more like this. We're recommending that this look more like the main building.
Okay, I apologize. I was under the opposite impression from what was projected earlier.
Am I-
Or am I misunderstanding?
Chairperson Sobalski, am I correct in that?
Yes, I think that's true. We prefer the design of the main racing building to be influential with the horse barn. I think part of it might be, and it's hard to tell from the drawing versus the attractive coloring rendering that you did that gives us a better perspective, is the siding the same? Because it looks so much different on the, I'll call it the pencil drawing versus the color drawing.
No, the proposed siding of the horse stable is not meant to be the same siding as the main building. This building was purely on function for horses. It wasn't meant to be a glamorous assembly building, it's purely function for the horses. I can do other things to it to dress it up, I understand your point. It is quite visible when you come into the project. And we'll put color on it and make it 3D so it's more, you can better picture it. But I think it should, in my mind, should still look like a stable or a barn per se, but not the gaming building.
Right, but the gaming building can influence the design of the horse barn. I'm not saying duplicate the same
Right.
architectural details of it, but the material should be, I would think, the same unless you come up with a better idea.
Well, the block is the same, there's no brick on it, it's the same block as the base of the main building.
But what about the siding?
It's a different type of siding, yes. More of an industrial type siding.
Right. I think if you use the same type of siding on the horse barn as you did on the racing building, that would help tie the two
Okay.
buildings together. That's one suggestion I would have. There may be others that other people have as well.
Sure.
You use the word dressed up. I think that's what we're looking for, is a more dressed up,
Right.
whether it be the horse barn or the main building.
Okay. Barn, I understand. In my mind, I still think the gaming building is coming across pretty good, other than a few areas. I don't see it as an industrial building.
It's got good bones, but it needs some enhancement.
Okay,
Especially for a PUD.
okay. Okay.
Any other questions from the commission?
What are the hours of operation again? I thought they,
We are open 7 days a week from about noon to midnight. It usually winds up around between 11 o'clock and midnight, depending on the day of the week.
is that the original hours? Okay.
7 to 11 at night?
Yeah, 7 days a week, noon to midnight, year-round.
No. they only
Yes, sir.
have-
Just like we have been for the last 40 years at Northville.
But do you have races at night?
No, we don't. We race 50 days a year. We currently start our races now at 7 o'clock at night. We have proposed a lighting package that if it fits the budget and all these things work out, we're going to intend to race at twilight, afternoon, into the evening hours, depending. I think I spoke at the last meeting, that that's a moving target where our product fits in the sky of simulcast racing across the country. It's something that we may have to adjust as we go along. We've done it, switching a Friday to a Thursday for special events, things like that. So our plan is to, if we have lights approved, find a time that's workable through our PUD contract. The trend now is in that 5 to 7 o'clock hour. If we are not successful in working the light package out with the Michigan Pace, then we're probably going to stick to daytime racing and start in that afternoon hour. But we're going to race 50 days a year. It's going to last about 3 hours a day. So it'll be 150 hours a year of horses going around the track. Other than those 150 hours, everybody will be inside.
Thank you.
The planner's report talked about needing improvement in what's known as ride hailing and pickup drop-offs.
Pardon me, one more time?
Ride hailing and pickup drop-offs. Can we see the plan?
That's currently done at the front entrance at our existing location. If somebody calls an Uber, they come to the front door and get dropped off or picked up. I mean, that's...
Well, I'm saying how we go ahead and rotate those people out some fashion.
Sure.
Which slide is that?
It's going to be probably page 10. In this same packet, go back to about page 10 of that package. Oh, all right, sorry. Probably page 20, I forgot the text is up front. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, I want to see the overall site plan. Okay, this is the slide here. Can you zoom in around the main building? Keep zooming. I want to look at the racing building specifically. There you go. All right, if you look on the north end of the racing building there's a little D-shaped island. So the overhang from the building that you saw in the rendering is going to extend out over that driveway. And for pickups and drop-offs, people will be able to swing in around that D-shaped island and pick up or drop off, and then drive back out to the parking area. And that little D-shaped island will feature a really nicely landscaped rain garden to make the entrance attractive. Does that answer your question?
I'd love to see how it comes in, and do you use both entrances to do that?
No, so the general public will utilize Techney Drive to come into the site. So they'll be entering in past the barn, and they'll drive through the main paved parking area where you see the 251 spaces. So they can either choose to park and walk in to the main entrance, or if they have someone that they want to drop off at the front entrance, they drive through the parking area, go around that little island, and then return to the parking area.
So you always maintain an egress lane?
Correct.
How many lanes in?
Into that turnaround,
No, it's just coming in from the road.
1 lane. It's going to be 1 lane in, 1 lane out. So, you know, as we said, other than on special race days, we're only talking about 200 to 300 cars coming in. So you're not going to see huge traffic jams like at a concert. Now, if there were a special event like a concert held at this venue, for those events, we would probably utilize special traffic control. And you could do things like make the Techney Drive all entrance and make the accessory road by the walking path all exit and help get more people in and out more quickly. So there's some flexibility to how this site can be run depending on what the needs of the event are.
That answer your question?
Somewhat.
What can I clarify for you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Other concerns or comments? Anyone else from your team here wish to present anything?
only to answer questions, further questions that you guys may have for us. If there's anything else with regards to the operation of the facility, I'd be happy to answer those. If there's anything with regards, I think we've touched the architectural issues. I think we've presented a safety plan that we've had approved with the fire marshal that is in your package. I know Mr. Bennett and I have had some preliminary conversations on some of our PUD agreements, community benefit agreements that we're going to be working through with the Board of Trustees, waiting to get the feedback from the draft we sent last week of the PUD contracts. We can tighten up whatever ambiguities that he's identified. And as soon as we get a look at it, we'll make sure we get that taken care of.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Typically, at this stage, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for either Laura or the engineer. Just going back to that PACE project portion with the special assessment, are you familiar with that, Laura?
I am not.
No? You're the engineer?
We'll send over all the base information from the state of Michigan. It's a relatively new program that I think in 2021 or 2020, the federal government, in order to incentivize new builds or redos of existing facilities, they put this money into a fund for people to go apply, and if they qualify, they're eligible for it as a portion of your loan, essentially. It's a gap between what your private lender's gonna do, what your private equity's gonna do, and what is the government will do. So if there's money for us, we're gonna utilize it to the best of our abilities. If it doesn't fit their criteria, we're gonna move on without it.
Who guarantees the loan? Who guarantees, is the loan collateral?
On the property, only on the property. Only on the property itself. Yeah. It's new to us too. We've been learning as we're going through this. When we had heard that this was something that you guys would like to see, I know we're the first guy kind of in that neighborhood. So we wanted to explore those options to find out what would be possible. And if we can fit it into the budget, we're committed to doing it. If it doesn't make sense long-term for us on the payback, it's, probably isn't going to make the cut. Just a business decision at that point.
Okay. All right, well, tell you what we're going to do. Typically, we do not have a public hearing for site plan approvals, but I know there's a lot of interest. We appreciate you all coming out. We always like to see residents come out and express their opinion. So I will hold an informal public hearing, but we'll adhere to the rules that we usually do use for public hearings. So you can come up, state your name and address if you wish to give us your address. You'll have 3 minutes. Everyone's allowed to speak once. Once everyone who has wished to speak has spoken, then if someone came up with a second idea that they want to express, they'll have an additional 3 minutes. We ask that you be clear, concise, cogent, and civil. So with that, is there anyone here that wishes to speak? We ask you to step up to the podium because the meetings are recorded.
Related only.
Yes, and this is only related to the site plan.
Yes, hello, Peter Deptula from 11271 Ridge Road. Okay, I got a couple of issues on here, maybe for our engineer here. He said he wasn't too big thing on that traffic control, but we expect people are probably going to get off the expressway, the majority of people to this place, isn't that right? Well, they're either going to get off at probably Beck Road. Now, what they should have over there, and I'd like somebody to maybe petition the county or whoever, but they're going to come down North Territorial, which we got churches and a few things down there, but they should have a sign and probably take the 5 Mile Road. I don't know what everybody thinks about that, but that's one big thing. And signs aren't always easy to get. So we have enough trouble on Ridge Road with the truck traffic. Yeah, I'd like to see them either slow it down or set them someplace, but it's really tough, that truck traffic over there. They have police on the side of the road quite often on there to slow the traffic down, but truck traffic is pretty noisy down there, Ridge Road, and we're about ready to have to pay for another road now pretty soon. It's breaking up. So I appreciate this time. Pete Deptula on Ridge Road.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Eileen Coleman. I'm a longtime resident, lifetime resident, actually, of Plymouth. And this isn't necessarily pertaining to the site plan, but it's to the plan as a whole. So I went and reviewed the PUD that you approved the last time, and I would actually argue that it doesn't qualify. And I would argue on a number of accounts that this doesn't qualify. The first is that, so I went through each of the necessary eligibility standards. First of all, we're going to call this what this is. This is gambling. This is a gambling venture. It's not a sporting facility. It's gambling. You're introducing it into Plymouth Township, and I would argue that actually the people of Plymouth Township aren't in favor of this. And furthermore,
Okay, just a minute,
there's a
please.
reason why a PUD
Would
has
you
to-
excuse me for a minute?
Sure.
Okay, we don't want anyone applauding, we don't want anyone booing. There's a diversity of opinion out there. Everyone needs to feel welcomed to express their opinion. So please, I ask you to be civil. We're not going to get into that. And I'm not sure, Miss, but, you know, it's been approved. And there's
I'm gonna
nothing we can
backtrack.
do.
I understand that. I'm going to backtrack a little bit, though. It did get approved. A public hearing is necessary for approval. I
Which
don't
was
think
held.
enough people were informed, and I'm going to state some things that I think are actually quite obvious from the PUD.
And what would you expect us to do with that
I just want you to
information?
hear, and it's going to go on record. It's
Okay.
Perhaps it won't have an effect, but
Okay.
maybe it will have an effect. Yeah.
All right.
So, the first is that, is this facility particularly suited to the needs of the residents or to a very small sector of gamblers, mainly coming from outside of our area? Whether or not you throw in soccer fields or you throw in the fireworks or whatever you add on, this is gambling. And the facility, when you look at it, it is gambling. It looks like a gambling facility, that's what it is. And you're gonna do horse racing for 150 hours out of an entire year. You're gonna put in a facility, you're gonna put in a racetrack for 150 hours, and the other hours, it's gaming. That's what this is. It's an addictive venture. And I won't go into that because that's not germane to what you're doing here, okay? At the board, I will go into that. That will be the next meeting. And then the traffic, I don't think has been addressed at all, even if you were gonna approve this PUD, which I don't think it should have been approved. No one's looked at this honestly. They already have traffic problems in this area. Have you honestly looked at traffic in single lanes coming in and out? Two-way traffic? You have emergencies, what are you gonna do? I'm not even gonna go into that because I'm not someone who studies traffic. I would say this, in number 7, I went through each of these eligibilities. It just doesn't meet it. Number 7, it's a stretch. This proposal is not compatible with the quiet nature of the area that's considered. This is a quiet area in Plymouth. It's consistently been a quiet area. It hasn't had heavy traffic like this. You're completely changing the nature of this area and of Plymouth Township. I don't know why this was rushed through, but I would ask you to step back and reconsider.
Anyone else? Okay.
My name is Dale Bernhardt. I've been here since 1981. And the young lady was absolutely correct. This was rushed through. The township residents did not know what was going on. I had to go to the building department a month ago and ask her, what's the status of the racetrack? She says, oh, it's already been approved. Okay, we weren't notified. You have plenty of methods. Now, I know that this isn't your job, it's the trustees, but I want to get it on record that they have plenty of methods to let us know that this is coming down and this is the date that we're going to take a look at it. Okay? That didn't happen. The other thing is about the traffic. We've got 3 main roads. We've got Beck Road, that looks like they've done a bombing run on it, North Territorial, and 5 Mile, same bombing run. Okay, you've got M14 right out there. Why aren't you even contemplating putting in an exit ramp off of M14? Alleviate the traffic off a residential road. You're not looking at that at all. You're looking at improved lighting or where you're going to put your windows. What about the residents? We need relief. The other thing is, what's this do to your bureaucracy? You're going to hire more people now to take a look at what's going on at the racetrack, which is going to increase our taxes also. Now, I want an answer with that. Are you going to have more bureaucracy to run this thing and oversee it? We don't want any more bureaucracy. And this stuff with the federal government, getting money from the federal government, if I'm not mistaken, they're looking at trying to reduce the debt of the federal government. This can be pulled back at any time. So you better make sure that when those funds get pulled back from the federal government, that we're not on the hook for any of this money. Kind of like to go back to who owned this property initially. Anybody from the township? Elected officials? Any bureaucracy? I want to know who's making out in this, because I don't see how the township, the residents, are going to make out at all. Can anybody answer that? Has anybody looked into who has equity or did have equity in this piece of property? And has the property already been transferred over to you? Is it now yours? Okay.
You addressed the question, excuse me, you addressed the question. Sir, you addressed the questions to us, not to the applicant. You're asking us these questions.
Fine. Has the property been transferred over?
We don't get into that.
Thank you very much for answering the question. I appreciate that.
All right.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to address is what's going to happen down the road here. This is gaming. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be an Indian tribe that's going to put in an application to put in a casino. That's what the building department told me could happen in 2 years, in 2025. Have anybody looked at that and tried to put a stop to that before it happens? Thank you.
Okay. We're getting away from the topic of site, and that's what we're here to address.
Good evening. My name is Richard Matayana. I live at 12062 Deer Creek Run. In regards to the site plan, your circulation, the engineer has indicated that there is really no need for a traffic study. I disagree. That in the morning, that trucks that are going through there, the dust, the pollution that's coming up through there, we're creating more pollution with all the traffic that's going to be coming through here. You indicated this is a regional venue. Okay, as far as what I read. So you're bringing in buses of people, more than 200 people? I doubt that. In your report, you indicate 480 seats, plus or minus. Which is it? Okay? Also, you show some outdoor venues. There's seating out there. Is that included in the 480? Is that included in the 200 people that are coming in? I just see that the volume of people going in between 12 noon and midnight is going to be pretty significant to a very quiet area, residential area, and you're bringing in something that is going to be in a regional nature that's going to impact the state. And as far as the architecture, it needs a lot of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Arlene Callahan. I live at 46581 Rockledge in Plymouth Township. I don't know how many of you saw the article in the Plymouth Township magazine a couple months ago about this project. There's a lovely 2-page spread showing all of the things that we saw tonight, or a lot of them, and how beneficial it was going to be to the township. One paragraph in it said, the racetrack was going to have parking for 200 cars, overflow 200 more. I see now it's 251. However, there was an additional site plan for a gaming facility, which I think we all know is a casino. That had a parking structure or a parking lot for 1,333 cars. So this is not about a racetrack, this is about getting a gambling casino in Plymouth Township.
Anyone else?
I'm Mary Pine. I live in Trailwood. We've lived here for 45 years. I figured out I was wrong last time, 3 extra years. Mr. Heisey prompted you and spoke with you at the meeting where you approved this PUD. That didn't seem really kosher, but he told you to ignore the second stage.
That's not for you.
I didn't think so. It appears to me that you've paid more attention to the decorating than the actual concept. So, pardon me, you know I have some issues, but Mr. Dorashevitz, you expressed surprise about this collecting of funds. You weren't elected, but you're now the treasurer, so you would be responsible for collecting the funds. You expressed surprise about this. So I'm wondering just what other surprises are coming. The lady before me, thank you very much. She probably mentioned a big surprise. This is something the community really doesn't want, for the most part. And what happens if it fails? I mean, you always need your exit strategy. And a lot of young people who haven't shown up today because this was not well publicized at all, think that it's a dying industry. Are we going to be responsible for paying debts? Are we going to be responsible for property that's decaying? I don't know. And I like the Carver brothers. They're very nice. I like them. But I feel that this has been handled in an incredibly irresponsible way. And I think eventually the public will know this and there will be some blowback. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Danny Gubernich. I live at 49359 Fox Drive, which is about 1.4 miles from this site to the south. I don't know if anybody here knows that there's a charter school that's going to be built directly across the street from our property at the Northridge Church at the south end. That should be starting construction. That's obviously not part of this discussion because it hasn't been taken into consideration. The amount of traffic that goes up and down Ridge Road already is tremendous, as I know because I live there. One of the things you mentioned about not requiring an MDOT traffic study, I think that is very imperative to be completed. The entrance and exit comes directly off of where the railroad tracks cross. Has anybody ever been stuck at the railroad tracks on this road? Come try standing there for about 20 minutes. You talked about 251 cars. You're only going to be running races 50 days a year. You're going to be open until midnight. Anybody ever seen the Michigan football stadium at night? When it's lit up, it creates a lot of light coming right off of that area. You'll be able to see the site for 5 miles easy in every direction. Green funding, I'm not sure where that's coming from. You talked about an assessment, but you really weren't sure about that. And lastly, this is going to create a lot of issues for this community that we don't even realize. A lot of unforeseen things. And so I would take that into strong consideration before you move forward with this. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, good evening. My name is Janice Rushton. I live at 46541 Biddy Hill, Plymouth. I learned about a meeting tonight here at the township about a casino coming to our racetrack in Northville. That's something I learned through a text message today. You're darn right I got myself over here. That's a big issue for me. But I thought, I come here and all we're talking about is the building design and things. And it sounds like this is a done deal. It's going forward. We're not going to have any discussion about this. And I don't want to talk about what the building looks like. I want to talk about gambling in our community. How many slot machines are you going to have in there? How many gaming tables are you going to have in there? You know, I want to know all about that. And I don't want a casino coming to Northfield. So thank you very much, but I've been really disappointed and ashamed in our community if this is how we get the news out to let the community participate in a major decision like this. A text message. You guys didn't send it to me. I don't know who did, but thank goodness for somebody who did. Thank you.
Anyone else? No, I'll get it.
Hi, my name is Lisa Higgins. I'm a resident of Country Club Village. I moved here in 2016 from Los Angeles to get away from the hustle and bustle and get some peace and quiet. And one reason I chose Plymouth was because it's a nice, got that hometown feel, but it's a classy town too. And I don't see anything classy about this idea-wise or aesthetically. It is industrial, and I do appreciate your concern about how it looks. And beyond that, I'm quite concerned. I'm assuming they're going to be serving alcohol there. So to have people drinking between 12 and 12, probably being there for lengths of time, I've got teenage kids driving those roads. And that's pretty concerning to wonder who else they're sharing those roads with every day. It's bad enough without that element, but I just don't see anything classy about this. Thank you.
All right, now, a reminder again, we have passed that approval stage already. I'm going to get into that a little bit. So, you know, everyone wants to get it on the record. We hear that. It's in the record. Anyone that wants to look at it 20 years from now will see the opposition that there was to the use. But unfortunately, for many people, they do have that sense of disappointment that it was approved. And I will say that the township met all of the notice requirements that they had to adhere to. So there was appropriate notice according to state law. So we did notice it. And also, please, I urge everyone here and tell all your friends, and we've said this before to other groups that come in, go to the township website. You can sign up for an e-notification. All of our agendas and our packets that we refer to here for the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees are on the website. They usually come out the Friday before a meeting. So, you know, spend a little time and you don't even have to read through the whole packet. You could look at the agenda and see if there's something there that you would want to speak to if there's a public hearing. And both of our groups will have public hearings, even though we're not always required to do that. We do respect the opinion of the residents. We're all residents too, and we're all taxpayers. So, you know, there is no hidden agenda here that has been alluded to. I think the text, and I've seen that text that probably most of you've gotten, in addition to some other things that just are not accurate. So you have to consider the source. If you get something from an unknown source, how do you know it's really valid? All right, sir.
My name is Ron Hogue. I live at 12393 Glenview Drive, Plymouth. I've been a resident for 39 years. To your point about awareness, the people of Plymouth are not aware. And I would just look at your own commission here. You haven't published any minutes of any meetings since January. There have been 4 meetings since then, and no minutes have been published. So you may say you can go to the website, you may say that you informed everyone, but you simply haven't even followed the law regarding publishing the minutes. Thank you.
Okay. The meetings are video recorded and they are online, and sometimes there are.
That's not the same thing.
Well, I realize that there's been some issues with the minutes that are being resolved. Pardon?
You're not in compliance by not publishing.
Okay. Did you have something? No. Yeah. All right. Anything else on the site itself?
My name is Gwen Miller. I live at 8831 Manton Avenue, Plymouth Township. I grew up in horse racing. My dad had harness racing horses. So I'm well familiar with the sport. It's a sport, people can gamble on it, that's your choice. But I also know the downside of how it's been, the business has dwindled over the years. I was drugged to many a county fair and racetracks around Ohio. Growing up, read this, I could read this, I knew my statistics by 12 on what horse could win. What I wanted to say though is, if there is no choice and we have to do this, the building is quite ugly. It's very unattractive. It could use some more, this is a traditional town and township. It could use more of a traditional look. As far as the barns, people are like, these aren't barns. I grew up in Ohio. I still go to Ohio. I have farming cousins. And I'm from Findlay, and south of Findlay, they have the horse barns for the North Ohio State Extension and Findlay, University of Findlay, and that is how barns are built now. That is exactly what they look like. Especially horse barns, there's actually a design so that the horses are kept comfortable. So I know these men would agree with me, because when you grow up with this stuff, you know what you're talking about. I don't like the whole traffic thing. I don't like gambling coming to this town. We moved here because when we moved here from Indiana, after we got married, the headhunter that brought us here said, buy a house in Plymouth. It's very nice. You'll like it. It's like your hometowns in Ohio, and it's been great. But I don't like the idea of a building coming in, and then later, when things, if it goes downhill like other tracks have, Raceway is one that I spent a lot of time at in Toledo, then I don't want to see a somewhat ugly building sitting there, and things will build up around it. There will probably be restaurants and this and that, and then what are you going to do with all of that? This is like, there's no country left in this country anymore. They're constantly putting things on it. And by the way, the sun only shines 50% of the time in Michigan in the year. 50%. I know this because seasonal depression's a bitch. And I am waiting to move to a sunnier site after my husband retires. But that said, solar panels, do they really work here? I'm just curious. Because they're not very pretty. It might be a tax break for some, but it's not an aesthetic look for the fact that we don't have sunshine here. I mean, it's actually rained almost every day for over 8 days. That's all.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think we'll close what we would call a public hearing, even though it wasn't a public hearing. I would remind people that I sympathize with the traffic. I live in the area myself. I'm familiar with the traffic along Ridge Road and North Territorial and even Ann Arbor Road, getting a little bit further. But the township doesn't have control of the roads here. That's one of the distinguishing features of a township in the city. So those are all taken care of for us by the county. So issues on that, I know the township has lobbied the county on some improvements. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. So unfortunately, there isn't much we can do about putting exits off of the freeways or widening the roads. We're really dependent on the county to allow us to do that. There's been no discussion about a casino. That wasn't on the site plan. It might be in another phase in the future. We don't know. That's up to the applicant to tell us. There'll be another whole set of public hearings if that should come to pass. So we're not considering any kind of a casino here at this point. And I'm still a little confused about the traffic study. So, Ms. Hall, did you have any conversation with the engineer about the traffic study? I mean, do you have a recommendation about that, or?
Mr. Commissioner?
Yeah.
During the public hearing, Laura did for me a traffic analysis performed by Fishback on February 28th that I was not previously aware about. If recommended by Planning Commission, I can have this report forward on to our traffic engineer, and a formal memo be done on this report of our recommendation from the analysis.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thoughts from the commission at this point?
I'd like to talk more about the traffic issues. I also live right off of Ridge Road, so I'd like to talk further about the traffic issues. I also live directly off Ridge Road, as a number of our commissioners do here, so we're very familiar with the situation as it's evolving. Ms. Howe, the MITC group that's developing the 5 Mile Corridor, I looked on their website, and there's references to traffic studies and proposals being prepared for 5 Mile Road in this area. But as I mentioned when we actually did the approval of the original PUD, I believe that the traffic issues here are really a key part of this overall development. And so I'm just curious, have there been any concrete updates from the MITC or any of our colleagues at the state, our representative or state senator, that would give us any encouragement that there is progress on improving 5 Mile Road in this, Ridge Road in this area?
I believe there have been some updates to that, some positive notes from the state on 5 Mile itself. I can look into that a little bit more and send you some specifics.
But not Ridge, right?
But not Ridge to my knowledge, no.
A lot of the concern I'm hearing about this proposal, probably the biggest single thing, is the traffic impact, on top of the traffic issues that already exist in the northwest corner of Plymouth Township now. So whatever you find out, I would like us to be able to share with the public, if that's possible.
Ms. Hall, if my memory serves me correctly, when we've looked at traffic volumes in the township, hasn't that area of Beck Road and 5 been one of the heaviest traveled roadways in the township?
The intersection of Beck and 5 is one of the busiest in the township, yes.
It's busy. What we need is a grade separation, but that ain't gonna happen. Not enough
No,
room.
they just spent, I'm sure, tons of money fixing that
Yeah, it's just
intersection
not
a couple
enough
years
room,
ago.
but
No,
It's busy.
it is.
It's busy.
And I have a question for the applicant on the parking. The parking issue came up. And I know that what you presented earlier was an early stab at what you're trying to achieve. And so there's always changes going on. But I know you have some special events like the Kentucky Derby Day.
Yes.
So is the parking that you're proposing at this point adequate to meet those special events that you occasionally hold?
Yes, we will utilize the, excuse me again, the barn parking lot, the barn area where the horses would be housed for the day, for the nightly racing. Those events that we will not be scheduling live racing on those days in order to use that parking lot, which would normally be used for horses, for our customers. We're confident we have enough. We're not guessing at this anymore. We've been doing it for a while, so we have a pretty good idea of what our daily counts are, what our traffic flows are. We're not a rush hour business. Our customers start flowing in around lunchtime, then they're in and out. When we say 300 people, sometimes all 300 are there at one time. Sometimes there's 50 to 80, and then there's another 20, and 20 leave. And we say 300 is that's what we would hold on a regular afternoon of busy days, in and outs, mostly in and outs. But we're pretty good at guessing. We're not really guessing anymore on what our daily business levels are going to be.
So for the special events, like the Kentucky Derby.
Like the Kentucky Derby.
How many people do you normally get in Northville?
In Northville, we usually, because we don't have turnstiles anymore, all that went out when everything became free admission and all that. So we use our program count to kind of gauge what we're seeing, and we're in that 900 to 1,100 people.
And how many vehicles do you usually have?
Well, we don't count, we just have a big parking lot. We have some paved, and then a lot of the parking lot at Northville, if any of you have been there, it's just gravel, and they fill that space up. We line it, I think if you go by now, we've got our barrels and our chalk lines for everybody to kind of get organized out in that area. But that area is rarely used except on those, I would say 3 days, maybe 4 a year when it comes to the racing business itself. Community events, things that you've asked us to be a part of, we'd have to gauge what we could do with the space we have.
If you're using the additional spots from the horse barn, how many additional parking spots does that give you?
Becky, I think you did a calculation.
Yeah, I did. You can park about 250 additional cars in that area.
Thank you.
The gravel lot in Northville, about how many parking spots is that?
Well, when we put the barrels and stripe it, there's probably 500 to 600.
So
We don't spend a lot of time on it. It's currently already belongs to another purchaser, so we usually only utilize it for those days, and we kind of dial back to where we use.
Any other comments?
I wanted to make one. There's a comment from someone in the audience about this, the plan that was shown in the original articles that showed up in The Rock and some of the media. Part of that plan showed what I believe was called a gaming building addition.
The Racino.
Yeah, that was not the plan that was actually reviewed at our planning commission meeting where we reviewed the PUD and approved it. That was an earlier plan. That article was out of date. The plan that's being proposed is what you saw tonight, and there's not a separate building called a gaming building addition. So I just wanted to make that point.
Anybody who's concerned, I just wanted to address that. There are no slot machines, there are no tables, there are no cards, there are no dice. We're exactly what we are in Northville, which is a sports bar with a lot of TVs where guys can bet on horses. In a couple days, 50 days a year, they can actually do it at that location live. We're not a mystery. All you have to do is come up and see what we do. We'd be happy to host you. Come up and take a look at what we do, and that's what we plan on doing in Plymouth Township.
Trustee Dorshevitz, did you have something?
No, I was just going to echo what you said.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, well, there appear to be several items that are still need adjustment and improvement. I think they're all clear to the team here. So I don't think we're ready for any kind of approval today. So unless some other commissioner has another suggestion, I would suggest that we postpone any potential approval or denial, excuse me, for some period of time, 3 months or 6 months, whatever.
I want to make sure we're clear on what we're still outstanding. I think that the PUD contract, which we're still waiting back for the comments, I don't think that should take 3 months. I think one of the issues in the PUD contract was the ambiguity about the reusable energies. I think we've tried to explain that. I don't know if I can write anything else down to make any other long-term commitments to that if they don't fit into the budget proposal. I think another issue was is that still up, the fire department's concerns, the emergency evacuation plan? I think those have all been submitted. Other than the architectural suggestions that you made, is there anything that you can point to that needs to be addressed before next month's meeting?
Yes, I think the planner's report addresses some of that. You've underlined it in the report, right, Laura? Yeah, the underlining text in here are the items that remain outstanding. So you need to look at that.
Becky, you have that? Have you received that? Okay.
Yeah. And when I'm suggesting a period of time, I mean, you don't have to, just you say 3 months at this point. You don't have to have 3 months. You can come in.
Sure, I just wanted to make sure that that list
Right.
isn't any longer than I thought it was when we started today.
Right.
In the
Yeah,
PACE-
whatever you
PACE
feel you're ready.
program?
We will, I'll make sure, I know you're the money guy, so I'll make sure and get our PACE representative in touch with you so he can kind of explain the way a banker would explain how that process works. Like I said, it's new to us. It was brought to our attention when it was contemplated through the board of doing these reusable energy sources. They have to fit the budget, and the way the federal government and the PACE program is, they've tried to help fit the budget with these programs. But we'll get you that information right away.
And be sure to get it to Ms. Howe as well.
Oh, absolutely, through her, absolutely.
All right. Are we ready for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we postpone application 2478, the Northville Downs of Plymouth PUD Development Plan, for up to 90 days. Is that enough, or do you want 6 months?
I'll be ready with the changes in next month. 30 days
Okay,
is all.
so within 90 days, up to 90 days, and that the applicant look at the planner's report, the fire department report, the engineer's report, and also that there's a review of the other traffic studies that have gone on in this area.
Is there support?
Support.
I think you may have said 2470, the wrong.
2478,
Perfect.
2478.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Barberina, supported by Commissioner Grieger to postpone application 2478 for up to 90 days. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Good luck to you.
See you in a couple weeks.
And thank you all for coming. We do appreciate your comments.